In the opulent Hôtel de la Reine in Lyon, a wealthy widow vanishes from her locked suite, leaving only a single emerald earring and a whisper of lavender. Hercule Poirot, with his unmatched grey cells, unravels a web of deceit. Greed, revenge, and betrayal lurk among a charming art dealer, a nervous companion, a secretive doctor, a vengeful socialite, and a bribed porter. A hidden passage, a forged note, and a missing box lead to a shocking truth. Can Poirot solve the mystery before the vanishing lady of Lyon is lost forever? Chapter 1. The Disappearance at the Hôtel de la Reine. The late afternoon sun bathed Lyon in a warm, amber hue, its rays dancing on the sluggish waters of the Rhône, as Hercule Poirot stepped from a taxi onto the cobbled street before the Hôtel de la Reine. The hotel, a grand edifice of Belle Époque elegance, stood proudly with its cream-coloured façade and gilded cornices, a beacon of luxury amidst the city's bustling charm. Poirot adjusted his immaculate Homburg hat, brushed an invisible speck from his tailored suit, and allowed himself a moment to admire the symmetry of the building. "Order and beauty," he murmured, "they are the foundations of civilization." He had been summoned to Lyon by a letter, penned in an elegant hand on lavender-scented stationery, from Madame Élise Dubois, a widow of considerable wealth and renown. Her note had been brief yet intriguing, requesting his presence to discuss a matter of utmost delicacy and urgency. Poirot, ever curious about the puzzles of human nature, had accepted without hesitation, arriving in Lyon with his valise and his unerring sense of purpose. But as he crossed the marble threshold of the hotel's foyer, he was met not by Madame Dubois, but by a palpable air of disquiet. The concierge, a wiry man with a pinched face and darting eyes, approached Poirot with a bow that was more nervous than deferential. "Monsieur Poirot, I presume," he said, his voice low. "I am Etienne, at your service. I regret to inform you that Madame Dubois, she is not here." "Not here?" Poirot's eyebrows arched, and he fixed the man with a penetrating gaze. "Explain, if you please, monsieur." Etienne wrung his hands, glancing about as if the crystal chandeliers might overhear. "She has vanished, monsieur, last night from her suite. The door was locked from the inside, the windows fastened. There is no trace of her, none." His voice cracked, and he lowered it further. "The staff are whispering of a ghost, a lady in white seen in the corridors, but I—" "Ghosts?" Poirot interrupted, his tone sharp yet amused. "Non, non, monsieur. Hercule Poirot does not chase phantoms. The facts, they are what matter. Take me to her suite at once." The suite, on the 4th floor, was a vision of opulence. Silk draperies in soft blues, a mahogany writing desk, and a 4-poster bed adorned with embroidered linens. Yet the air was heavy with an unspoken tension. Poirot's keen eyes swept the room, noting every detail with the precision of a watchmaker. On the plush carpet, near a velvet-upholstered armchair, lay a single emerald earring, its facets catching the light like a fallen star. Beside it, almost imperceptible, was the faintest trace of lavender perfume, lingering like a memory. The windows were indeed locked, their latches undisturbed, and the door's bolt was still engaged from within. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, stroking his meticulously groomed moustache. "A lady of such distinction does not simply evaporate. There is a method to this mystery, and I shall uncover it." Inspector Claude Fournier of the Lyon police arrived shortly after, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. A man of middle years with a weathered face and a manner both earnest and slightly exasperated, he greeted Poirot with a firm handshake. "Monsieur Poirot, your reputation precedes you. I am grateful you are here, though I confess this case baffles me. No body, no signs of struggle, no ransom note, nothing. It is as if Madame Dubois has melted into the ether." Poirot's eyes twinkled with a quiet confidence. Melted, Inspector? No. She has been removed, and the how, it will lead us to the why. Tell me, what do you know of Madame Dubois's activities before she vanished? Fournier recounted the details. Madame Dubois, a woman of 50, was known for her beauty, her wit, and her collection of rare jewels, chief among them the Étoile Verte, an emerald necklace of unparalleled value. She had arrived in Lyon a week prior, ostensibly to attend a charity gala, but had kept to herself, save for a few notable interactions. The evening before her disappearance, she had dined with an art dealer, received a visit from a physician, and accepted a parcel from the hotel porter. By morning, her absence was discovered when her companion, a young woman named Mademoiselle Beaumont, raised the alarm. Poirot listened intently, his mind already arranging the facts into a pattern. "This earring," he said, gesturing to the gleaming jewel on the carpet. "It is no accident that it remains. And the perfume? Lavender, oui? It is a signature, a clue left by design or by chance. We shall see." He knelt to examine the earring, noting its bent clasp as if it had been wrenched free. The carpet bore no signs of violence, yet a faint scuff mark near the window caught his attention, a mark too deliberate to be overlooked. "Inspector," Poirot said, rising, "this room, it holds secrets, and secrets, they do not stay hidden from Hercule Poirot." As twilight deepened outside, casting long shadows across the suite, Poirot felt the stirrings of a challenge. The Vanishing Lady of Lyon was no mere ghost story. It was a puzzle, intricate and deliberate, and he would solve it with the precision that had made him a legend. Chapter 2. The Circle of Suspects. The Hôtel de la Reine's drawing room, with its high ceilings and gilded mirrors, seemed to hum with an undercurrent of unease, as Hercule Poirot settled into a cushioned armchair, his small, neat figure a stark contrast to the grandeur around him. The morning light filtered through heavy velvet curtains, casting intricate patterns on the polished parquet floor. Poirot's sharp eyes, however, were not on the decor, but on the task at hand, unravelling the enigma of Madame Elise Dubois's disappearance. Inspector Claude Fournier, standing by the fireplace, produced a leather-bound notebook and cleared his throat, ready to brief Poirot on those who had crossed paths with the missing widow in her final hours. "Monsieur Poirot," Fournier began, his voice steady, but tinged with frustration, "we have identified 5 individuals who interacted with Madame Dubois on the evening of her disappearance. Each claims innocence, but I trust your unique methods will uncover what my men could not." Poirot inclined his head, his fingers steepled before him. "The truth, Inspector, is like a fine tapestry, woven from many threads, some hidden, some bold. Let us examine these threads one by one." Fournier opened his notebook. First, Monsieur Antoine Lefebvre, an art dealer of some repute. He dined with Madame Dubois in the hotel's restaurant at 8 o'clock. Witnesses say their conversation was animated, even intimate. Next, Mademoiselle Claire Beaumont, her companion, a young woman of 22, who was in the suite until 9, but claimed she heard nothing unusual. Then Dr. Julien Moreau, a physician who visited at 9 to treat Madame Dubois for a minor complaint. "Fatigue," he said. Madame Vivienne Charpentier, a socialite and known rival, was seen speaking sharply to Madame Dubois in the foyer earlier that day. Finally, Georges, the hotel porter, delivered a parcel to her suite at 10, which he described as oddly heavy. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A most intriguing cast, Inspector. I shall speak with each. For the human heart, it betrays itself in the smallest gestures. Arrange for them to meet me here, one at a time." The first to enter was Antoine Lefebvre, a man in his late 30s whose tailored suit and easy smile suggested both wealth and charm. His dark hair was slicked back, and his eyes held a spark of confidence that wavered only slightly under Poirot's scrutiny. "Monsieur Lefebvre," Poirot began, his tone deceptively mild. "You dined with Madame Dubois. Of what did you speak?" Lefebvre leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "Art, mostly. She had an interest in my collection, Renaissance sketches, you know. She was captivating, full of stories about her travels. We discussed her emerald necklace, the Étoile Verte. I offered to purchase it, but she laughed and said it was not for sale." Poirot noted the casual mention of the necklace, his mind filing it away. And her mood? Was she anxious? Distracted? Perhaps a touch reserved? Lefebvre admitted, his fingers drumming lightly on the armrest. But nothing alarming. She excused herself early, saying she expected a visitor. Next came Mademoiselle Claire Beaumont, a slender young woman with pale cheeks and eyes that darted nervously. Her hands twisted a lace handkerchief as she sat. Her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what happened, Monsieur Poirot. Madame was kind to me, but that evening she seemed preoccupied. She sent me to my room at 9, saying she needed privacy." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze gentle yet piercing. "Privacy, mademoiselle. Did she receive anyone after the doctor's visit?" Claire hesitated, her fingers tightening on the handkerchief. "I heard her door close around 10, but I was in my room across the hall. I assumed it was the porter with her parcel. I swear, I heard no cries, no struggle." Dr. Julian Moreau entered next, his gaunt face betraying a man under strain. His spectacles slipped down his nose as he spoke, and his hands, though steady, bore the faintest tremor. "My visit was routine," he insisted. "Madame Dubois complained of fatigue, perhaps a headache. I prescribed a mild tonic and left within 15 minutes. She was perfectly well when I departed." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A tonic, doctor? Nothing stronger? And her demeanour? Did she confide any fears?" Moreau adjusted his spectacles. "She mentioned a business matter troubling her, but nothing specific. I'm a physician, not a confidant, Monsieur Poirot." His tone was clipped, and Poirot noted the defensive edge. Madame Vivienne Charpentier swept into the room like a storm, her crimson gown a bold statement against the muted elegance of the drawing-room. Her sharp features and haughty posture spoke of a woman accustomed to command. "This is absurd," she declared before Poirot could speak. "Élise Dubois was a vain, foolish woman who likely staged this drama for attention. I saw her in the foyer, flaunting that wretched necklace as always. We exchanged words, hardly a crime." Poirot's smile was polite, but unyielding. "Words, madame, or something more. Your rivalry with Madame Dubois is well known." Vivienne's eyes flashed. "Rivalry! She was beneath me. That necklace was a gift from a man we both knew years ago. She wore it to taunt me, nothing more." Her voice dripped with disdain, but Poirot caught a flicker of something deeper. Resentment, perhaps even pain. The last to appear was Georges, the porter, a stocky man with a weathered face and eyes that avoided Poirot's. He stood stiffly, clutching his cap. "I only delivered the parcel, monsieur," he said gruffly. "A small wooden box, heavier than it looked. Madame Dubois took it eagerly, thanked me, and I left. I know nothing else." Poirot tilted his head. "Eagerly, you say? Did she open it in your presence?" "No, monsieur. She closed the door quickly." Georges shifted his weight, his discomfort palpable. "I'm just a porter. I don't ask questions." When the interviews concluded, Poirot remained in the drawing-room, his fingers tracing the rim of a teacup as he pondered. Each suspect had revealed a fragment of the truth, yet none had told all. Lefebvre's interest in the Étoile Verte suggested greed, but his charm could mask calculation. Claire's timidity hinted at loyalty, or fear. Moreau's unease and vague answers raised questions about his role. Vivienne's venom pointed to a personal vendetta, while Georges' reticence suggested he knew more than he admitted. Poirot rose, his movements precise. "Inspector Fournier," he said, turning to the policeman who had lingered in the doorway. "These 5, they form a circle around Madame Dubois, each with a motive, each with an opportunity. But the key lies in what they do not say. I must return to the suite. There is something I have overlooked. As he left the drawing room, Poirot's mind buzzed with possibilities. The emerald earring, the lavender scent, the locked door, all were pieces of a puzzle that refused to align. Yet he knew, with the certainty that had solved countless mysteries, that the truth lay in the details. The human heart, he murmured, it is a labyrinth, but Hercule Poirot navigates even the darkest paths. Outside, the Rhône flowed on, indifferent to the secrets hidden within the Hôtel de la Reine. But Poirot, with his grey cells in full motion, was already closing in on the truth. Chapter 3. The clue of the earring. The morning mist clung to the windows of the Hôtel de la Reine, softening the outlines of Lyon's rooftops, as Hercule Poirot stood once more in Madame Elise Dubois' suite. The room, with its delicate blue draperies and polished mahogany, seemed to mock the gravity of the mystery with its serene elegance. Yet Poirot's attention was fixed not on the opulence, but on the small gleaming object that lay upon the carpet. The emerald earring, its solitary presence a silent accusation. He knelt, his movements precise, and retrieved it with a gloved hand, holding it to the light. The gem sparkled with a cold, verdant fire, but it was the bent clasp that drew his scrutiny, a clasp twisted as if caught in a moment of violence or haste. "Most curious," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the stillness. "An earring does not fall so neatly, nor does its clasp bend without cause. This, it is a message, but from whom, and to what end?" Inspector Claude Fournier, hovering near the doorway, shifted impatiently. "Monsieur Poirot, we have combed this room thrice over. No blood, no signs of a struggle, only this earring and that faint whiff of lavender. Perhaps Madame Dubois simply misplaced it and left of her own accord." Poirot's eyes twinkled with gentle reproach. "Left, Inspector, through a locked door and fastened windows? Non, non, mon ami. The facts, they do not permit such a conclusion. Observe." He gestured to the carpet, where a faint scuff mark, barely discernible, marred the plush pile near the window. It was a crescent-shaped indentation, too precise for a careless footstep, suggesting the edge of a shoe or a tool. Poirot's gaze moved to the window itself, its heavy latch gleaming in the morning light. He tested it, finding it secure, yet his fingers lingered on the mechanism, noting a minute scratch on the brass, a scratch that spoke of tampering. "This latch," he said, turning to Fournier, "it appears untouched, yet appearances, they deceive. With a fine instrument one could manipulate it from the outside, oui? But we must confirm." He stepped back, his mind racing, arranging the fragments of evidence into a pattern only he could yet perceive. Fournier frowned, his practicality at odds with Poirot's precision. But why leave the earring? If this was theft, why not take both? The étoile verte necklace alone is worth a fortune. Poirot's moustache twitched. The necklace, it is the heart of this affair. But the earring, it is a clue to the method. Perhaps it was torn free in a moment of resistance, or perhaps it was left deliberately, to mislead. We must learn more of Madame Dubois's habits. He summoned the maid, a wiry woman named Sophie, whose eyes were red from sleeplessness or fear. She curtsied awkwardly, her hands twisting in her apron. "Monsieur, I swear I know nothing of Madame's disappearance. I cleaned this room yesterday afternoon, and all was in order." Poirot's tone was soothing, disarming. "Of course, mademoiselle. But tell me, did Madame Dubois keep anything of importance? Papers, perhaps, or letters in this room?" Sophie hesitated, then nodded. "She had a small desk, locked always. She said it held private correspondence. I never saw inside, but she was particular about it." With Fournier's permission, Poirot approached the desk, a delicate piece inlaid with mother-of-pearl. The lock was simple but sturdy, and with a deft touch, Poirot opened it, using a slender tool from his pocket. Inside he found a single letter, folded neatly, its lavender-tinted paper matching the scent that lingered in the air. The message was brief, written in an elegant, flowing hand. "Meet me at midnight. Trust no one. L." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "This L," he said, holding the letter to the light. "It is a signature of significance. Lefebvre, perhaps. Or another, yet to be revealed." He handed the letter to Fournier, who studied it with a furrowed brow. No seal, no address, Fournier noted. It could be a forgery, meant to lure her. "Précisément," Poirot agreed. But lured to where? The door was locked, the windows secure. Yet the scuff mark and this letter suggest a rendezvous. We must consider the possibility of a hidden exit. Poirot paced the room, his steps measured, his mind a whirlwind of deduction. He paused by a large tapestry, depicting a pastoral scene, its colours vibrant against the wall. His fingers brushed the fabric, and he detected a slight draught, a whisper of air where none should be. With a gentle tug, he revealed a panel, cunningly concealed within the woodwork, its edges flush with the wall. It opened with a soft click, revealing a narrow passage that descended into darkness. "Mon Dieu!" Fournier exclaimed, peering into the gloom. "A secret passage? In a hotel?" Poirot's smile was faint but triumphant. "Not so uncommon in buildings of this age, Inspector. The Hôtel de la Reine. It was once a private mansion, oui? Such passages were built for discretion or escape. This is how Madame Dubois was removed, willingly or not." Fournier summoned an officer to explore the passage, but Poirot's attention returned to the earring, now resting in his palm. "This jewel," he said softly. "It is part of the Étoile Verte set, yet it stands alone. Why not take the necklace? Unless the theft was not the goal, but a distraction." That evening, Poirot observed the suspects at a hotel gala, a glittering affair where Lyon's elite mingled under crystal chandeliers. Antoine Lefebvre moved with practiced grace, his arm linked with Claire Beaumont's, their heads bent in hushed conversation. Madame Vivienne Charpentier held court near the grand piano, her laughter sharp, her eyes flicking toward Claire with undisguised contempt. Dr. Julien Moreau lingered at the bar, his glass untouched, his gaze restless. Georges, the porter, circulated with a tray of champagne, his expression guarded. Poirot sipped his tisane, his mind sifting through the day's discoveries. The letter, the scuff mark, the hidden panel, all pointed to a carefully orchestrated plan. But was Madame Dubois a victim or a participant? The L intrigued him most. Its anonymity was a challenge, a thread he would pull until the tapestry unravelled. As the orchestra struck up a waltz, Poirot's grey cells hummed with purpose. "The truth," he murmured, "it hides in plain sight, but Hercule Poirot sees what others overlook." With a final glance at the suspects, he resolved to probe deeper, knowing the next clue would bring him closer to the heart of the mystery. Chapter 4. A Midnight Revelation. The Hôtel de la Reine stood silent under a canopy of stars, its grandeur softened by the night's embrace as Hercule Poirot retraced his steps through the labyrinthine corridors of Madame Elise Dubois' suite. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and lingering lavender, a reminder of the absent widow. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly on the parquet as he moved with purpose, his mind a whirl of deductions sparked by the discoveries of the day. The emerald earring, the cryptic note signed L, and the concealed panel that had opened a new avenue in the mystery. The scuff mark by the window and the hidden passage suggested a calculated exit. But the question remained, had Madame Dubois walked into the darkness willingly, or had she been coerced? Poirot stood before the tapestry that concealed the panel, his fingers tracing the intricate embroidery as he considered the timeline of that fateful evening. Inspector Claude Fournier, ever diligent, had provided a precise account. Madame Dubois had dined with Antoine Lefebvre at 8, received Dr. Julien Moreau at 9, and accepted a parcel from the porter, Georges, at 10. By midnight, when the note suggested a clandestine meeting, she was gone, leaving only the earring and a whisper of her perfume. Midnight, Poirot murmured, his moustache twitching. It is the hour of secrets, when truths are whispered or silenced. He pushed the panel open once more, its hinges gliding smoothly despite years of disuse. The narrow passage beyond was cloaked in shadow, its stone walls cool to the touch. Fournier, summoned to join him, arrived with a lantern casting a flickering glow that revealed a steep staircase descending to the hotel's lower levels. "This leads to the service corridors," Fournier said, his voice echoing faintly. "They connect to the kitchens and cellars rarely used at night. If someone took her this way, they knew the hotel's secrets." Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the steps. "And the scuff mark by the window, Inspector. It was a diversion, perhaps, to suggest an exit where none occurred. But here—" He paused, kneeling to examine the staircase. A tiny shred of lavender silk, caught on a protruding nail, glimmered in the lantern's light. Poirot retrieved it with care, holding it up like a trophy. "This, mon ami, is from Madame Dubois' gown. She passed this way, willingly or not." Fournier's brow furrowed. "But why no cry for help? The sedative Dr. Moreau prescribed. Could it have dulled her senses?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied, his tone measured. "Or perhaps she expected to meet this L and walked into a trap. We must explore further." The staircase led to a dimly lit corridor, its walls lined with dusty crates and forgotten furniture. At the far end, a door opened to the hotel's rear courtyard, where deliveries were received under cover of darkness. Poirot noted the door's heavy bolt, which showed no signs of forced entry. "This exit," he said, "it is too convenient. Someone with knowledge of the hotel planned this route." Returning to the suite, Poirot reconstructed the evening in his mind. The note's instruction, "Meet me at midnight, trust no one," suggested urgency, perhaps fear. But who was L? Antoine Lefebvre was the obvious candidate, yet his demeanour, while calculating, lacked the desperation of a kidnapper. Could it be a pseudonym, or a deliberate misdirection? Poirot's grey cells churned, piecing together the motives of the suspects. Lefebvre's interest in the Étoile Verte, Claire Beaumont's nervous reticence, Dr. Moreau's trembling hands, Vivienne Charpentier's venom, and Georges' unease about the mysterious parcel. The parcel intrigued Poirot most. Georges had described it as a small wooden box, heavier than it looked, delivered at 10. Madame Dubois had accepted it eagerly, yet it was missing from the suite. "This box," Poirot mused, "it holds a secret, perhaps the key to her disappearance. Was it a lure, or the object of the crime?" He turned to Fournier, who was watching with a mix of admiration and impatience. "Inspector, I wish to speak with Mademoiselle Beaumont again. Her room is across the hall. She may have heard more than she admits." Claire Beaumont entered the suite reluctantly, her pale face framed by a simple shawl. Her eyes, red-rimmed, betrayed sleepless nights. Poirot's tone was gentle, coaxing. "Mademoiselle, you said you heard the door close at 10, when Georges delivered the parcel. But after, between 10 and midnight, did you hear nothing else? A voice, a footstep?" Claire's fingers twisted her shawl. I was reading, Monsieur Poirot. The walls are thick, but I thought I heard a soft thud, like something falling just before 11. I assumed Madame had dropped a book or a case. I didn't check. She valued her privacy." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A thud, you say, and no voices?" She shook her head, then hesitated. "There was a telephone call earlier, around 9:30. Madame sounded agitated. I couldn't hear the words, but her tone was sharp, as if arguing." "Merci, mademoiselle," Poirot said, dismissing her gently. To Fournier he added, "This call, it is significant. We must learn who spoke with Madame Dubois. And the thud, perhaps the earring, torn free, or the box, set down in haste." As night deepened, Poirot stood alone in the suite, the silence pressing against him. The hidden passage, the silk fragment, the missing box, All pointed to a meticulously planned act. But was it theft, abduction, or something more intricate? The Étoile Verte loomed large in his thoughts, its value a magnet for greed. Yet the absence of a ransom note suggested a deeper motive. Revenge, perhaps, or betrayal. He gazed at the tapestry, its pastoral scene a mocking contrast to the drama it concealed. "The truth," he whispered, "it is close, yet it dances just beyond reach." But Hercule Poirot, he does not falter. With a final glance at the room, he resolved to probe the suspect's secrets further, certain that the next revelation would illuminate the path to Madame Dubois. Chapter 5. The Motive Unfolds. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Hôtel de la Reine's drawing room, casting long shadows across the ornate rugs, as Hercule Poirot arranged his thoughts with the precision of a chess master. The discoveries of the previous night, the concealed passage, the shred of lavender silk, the mysterious telephone call, had sharpened his focus. Madame Elise Dubois' disappearance was no mere accident. It was a tapestry of deceit, woven with threads of greed, envy, and hidden truths. Poirot's task now was to unravel the motive, and to do so, he would confront the suspects with the weight of his deductions. Inspector Claude Fournier stood by the fireplace, his arms crossed, his face a mask of determination tempered by fatigue. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, "your discovery of the passage is remarkable, but we are no closer to finding Madame Dubois. The silk proves she was taken that way, but to where? And why no ransom demand for a woman of her wealth?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, his fingers brushing the tips of his immaculate moustache. "Patience, mon ami. The absence of a ransom note, it is as telling as its presence would be. This is not a simple crime of profit, there is a deeper purpose. Revenge, perhaps, or a desire to silence. We must press the suspects, for one among them holds the key." He requested Fournier to gather the 5 suspects: Antoine Lefebvre, Claire Beaumont, Dr. Julien Moreau, Madame Vivienne Charpentier, and Georges the porter, in the drawing-room. The setting, with its gilded mirrors and soft velvet chairs, seemed almost too civilized for the confrontation to come, yet Poirot knew that truth often emerged in such contrasts. As the suspects filed in, their expressions ranged from wary to defiant, each betraying a flicker of unease under Poirot's unwavering gaze. Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, the disappearance of Madame Dubois is no mystery of chance. She was taken through a hidden passage, as evidenced by a fragment of her gown. But the question is why, and by whom? Let us consider the facts." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Monsieur Lefebvre, you dined with Madame Dubois, discussing her Étoile Verte necklace, a prize you coveted. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you heard a thud and a heated telephone call, yet kept silent. Dr. Moreau, your visit left Madame Dubois drowsy, perhaps too drowsy. Madame Charpentier, your enmity with the victim is no secret. And Georges, your parcel, it was no ordinary delivery, was it?" A collective murmur rippled through the group. Georges, clutching his cap, flushed deeply. "I told you, monsieur, it was just a box. I didn't open it." Poirot's eyes fixed on him. "Yet you said it was heavy, Georges, and Madame Dubois received it eagerly. Where is this box now? It is not in her suite." Georges stammered, his gaze dropping to the floor, but he offered no answer. Turning to Madame Charpentier, Poirot's tone sharpened. "Madame, you spoke of a shared past with Madame Dubois, a man, a necklace, a wound that festers. Did you seek to reclaim what you felt was yours?" Vivian's lips curled into a sneer. "You accuse me of theft. That necklace was a trifle compared to her arrogance. I despised her, yes, but I would not stoop to such a scheme." Her voice trembled with indignation, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Claire Beaumont, pale and trembling, clutched her shawl. "I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I only wanted to protect Madame. She was kind to me, She trusted me. Trusted you, mademoiselle. Poirot's voice softened, coaxing. Yet you did not tell us of the telephone call at once. Who was it that made her so agitated? Claire's eyes filled with tears. I don't know. It was a man's voice, low and urgent. She said something about debts and promises broken. I thought it was a private matter. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. He turned to Dr. Moreau, whose spectacles glinted nervously in the sunlight. Doctor, your tonic, was it truly so mild, or did it serve another purpose? Moreau bristled, his hands clenching. I am a professional, Monsieur Poirot. I prescribed what was needed, nothing more. But Poirot was relentless. He revealed the hidden passage to the group, watching their reactions. Claire gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Lefebvre's brow furrowed, his charm faltering. Madame Charpentier's eyes narrowed, while Moreau's face grew ashen. Georges dropped his cap, his hands shaking as he retrieved it. This passage, Poirot continued, was known to someone in this hotel. Someone who planned Madame Dubois' removal. But for what? The Étoile Verte remains unclaimed, yet the box is gone. I suspect it held something of equal value, something worth risking such a daring act. He paused, letting the silence press upon them. Monsieur Lefebvre, you offered to buy the necklace. Was it to distract from another prize? Madame Charpentier, did your hatred drive you to orchestrate this vanishing? Dr. Moreau, did you drug her to ensure compliance? And Georges, what did you know of that box's contents? The room crackled with tension, but no one confessed. Poirot's grey cells worked furiously, piecing together the fragments. The note signed L, the telephone call about debts, the missing box. He suspected a conspiracy, but the motive remained elusive. Was it the necklace, a personal vendetta, or a secret Madame Dubois had guarded too closely? He dismissed the suspects, their faces etched with unease, and turned to Fournier. Inspector, we must search the hotel's lower levels, the cellars, the unused rooms. If Madame Dubois was taken through that passage, she may still be near. And the box, it must be found. Fournier nodded, issuing orders to his men. As they dispersed, Poirot lingered, his gaze falling on a small vase of lavender flowers on a side table. A subtle echo of Madame Dubois' scent. The motive, he whispered, it lies in what she knew, or what she possessed. Hercule Poirot will uncover it, for no secret escapes the light of reason. With the suspect's reactions fresh in his mind, Poirot prepared for the next phase of his investigation, certain that the truth was drawing nearer, hidden in the shadows of the Hôtel de la Reine. Chapter 6. The Doctor's Secret. The Hôtel de la Reine's grand staircase gleamed under the soft glow of chandeliers. But Hercule Poirot's mind was far from the hotel's opulence as he descended to the lobby, his polished shoes tapping a deliberate rhythm. The revelations of the previous hours, the hidden passage, the lavender silk, the missing wooden box, had tightened the web of the mystery, yet the heart of it remained elusive. Madame Elise Dubois' disappearance was a puzzle of precision, and Poirot sensed that the key lay not only in the physical clues, but in the secrets harboured by those around her. Of the suspects, Dr. Julien Moreau's nervous demeanour had piqued Poirot's curiosity most, and he resolved to probe deeper into the physician's role. Inspector Claude Fournier met Poirot in the lobby, his face etched with the strain of a case that defied logic. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his voice low, my men are searching the cellars and service corridors, but it's a labyrinth down there. If Madame Dubois is hidden in the hotel, she's well concealed. What next? Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet determination. Next, Inspector, we unravel the thread of Dr. Moreau's involvement. His hands, they tremble. His answers, they evade. I suspect he knows more than he admits. Let us speak with him alone. Fournier escorted Poirot to a small parlour off the main foyer, where Dr. Moreau awaited, seated stiffly on a brocade chair. His gaunt face was pale, his spectacles slipping down his nose as he adjusted them with a trembling hand. The room, with its muted greens and gold-trimmed furniture, seemed to close in around him, amplifying his unease. Poirot sat opposite, his posture impeccable, his gaze piercing yet disarming. "Dr. Moreau," he began, his voice smooth as velvet, "you told us your visit to Madame Dubois was routine, a tonic for fatigue, nothing more. Yet I observe, monsieur, that you are not at ease. The truth, it weighs heavily, does it not?" Moreau's lips tightened, and he pushed his spectacles up again. "I am a physician, Monsieur Poirot, not a criminal. I treated Madame Dubois for a headache and nervous exhaustion. She was anxious, yes, but I did nothing beyond my duty." Poirot leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "Anxiety, you say? And what did she confide, doctor? A woman of her stature does not summon a physician for a mere headache without cause." Moreau hesitated, his eyes darting to Fournier, who stood silently by the door. "She spoke of a business matter. Debts, perhaps, or an investment gone wrong. She was vague, but her distress was clear. I prescribed a sedative to calm her nerves, that is all." "A sedative," Poirot repeated, his tone laced with curiosity. "Of what kind and how strong? Enough to make her drowsy, perhaps, or unconscious?" Moreau's face flushed. "A mild dose of chloral hydrate, perfectly standard. I left her alert and, well, at 9 o'clock. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Standard, you say? Yet I wonder, doctor, if this sedative was stronger than you claim. Enough to render a woman pliable, easy to move through a hidden passage without resistance." Moreau rose abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is outrageous. I am no kidnapper." "Calm yourself, monsieur," Poirot said, raising a hand. "I accuse no one, yet, but the truth, it will emerge. Tell me, did you know of the wooden box delivered by Georges?" Moreau sank back into his chair, his defiance crumbling. "No. I heard of it later, from the staff. I know nothing of its contents." Sensing a crack in the doctor's armour, Poirot pressed gently. "You are troubled, doctor. Is it guilt or fear? Someone, perhaps, has influence over you, a debt, a secret." Moreau's hands clenched, and for a moment silence hung heavy. Then, in a low voice, he admitted, "I have debts, yes, a failed venture, but I would never harm a patient." Poirot noted the confession but did not press further. Instead, he thanked Moreau and dismissed him, his mind already turning to the next step. "Inspector," he said, turning to Fournier, "I wish to consult the hotel's pharmacist. The sedative, it is a pivot in this affair." The pharmacist, a meticulous man named Monsieur Renaud, worked in a small dispensary tucked behind the hotel's kitchens. He confirmed that Dr. Moreau had requested chloral hydrate for Madame Dubois, but his records showed an unusually high dose, enough to induce deep sleep, if not unconsciousness, for several hours. "It surprised me," Renaud admitted, "but Dr. Moreau is respected. I assumed he had reason." "Reason indeed," Poirot murmured, "or a purpose." Back in the lobby, Poirot reflected on the implications. A strong sedative, a hidden passage, a missing box. Each piece suggested a plan to remove Madame Dubois without a struggle. But where was she now? Fournier's men had found no trace in the cellars, yet Poirot's instincts told him she was close, hidden in a place overlooked by all but the guilty. He requested to see Claire Beaumont again, suspecting her timid loyalty concealed more than she had revealed. She entered the parlour, her eyes downcast, her hands twisting a handkerchief. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you overheard Madame Dubois' telephone call about debts and betrayal. Was there anything else? A name? A hint of the caller's identity?" Claire bit her lip, tears welling. I didn't want to betray her trust, but the voice was male, deep and threatening. She said Antoine once, but I couldn't be sure if it was him or someone else. "Antoine," Poirot repeated, his mind flashing to Lefebvre. Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful. As Claire left, Poirot turned to Fournier. The call, the sedative, the box, they converge. I believe Madame Dubois was drugged, carried through the passage, and hidden somewhere in this hotel. We must search the unused rooms, attics perhaps, or storage spaces forgotten by the staff. Fournier nodded, rallying his men. Poirot's grey cells buzzed with possibilities. The Étoile Verte necklace remained a tantalizing motive. Yet Claire's mention of debts and betrayal suggested a personal vendetta. Was Lefebvre the mastermind, or a pawn in a larger scheme? And what of Madame Charpentier's hatred, or Georges' complicity? As the search began, Poirot stood in the lobby, his gaze fixed on a portrait of the hotel's founder, a stern woman whose eyes seemed to guard its secrets. The truth, he whispered, it is near, and Hercule Poirot will not rest until it is revealed. Chapter 7. The Truth Revealed. The Hôtel de la Reine's cavernous cellars echoed with the footsteps of Inspector Claude Fournier's men, their lanterns casting jittery shadows across damp stone walls as they searched for traces of Madame Elise Dubois. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the search, his small figure silhouetted against the flickering light, his mind a crucible of deduction. The clues, the emerald earring, the lavender silk, the missing wooden box, the strong sedative, had converged into a pattern. Yet the final piece eluded him. Was Madame Dubois a victim of greed, vengeance, or a deeper secret? The answer, Poirot knew, lay in the hotel's hidden corners and the hearts of its suspects. Fournier approached, his face taut with urgency. Monsieur Poirot, we've found something in a storage room off the main cellar. A wooden box, small but sturdy, tucked behind a crate of old linens. It's empty, but there's a faint scent of lavender inside. Poirot's eyes sparkled. The box delivered by Georges. Show me, Inspector. The storage room was cramped, its air thick with dust and the musty tang of neglect. The box, unadorned but finely crafted, sat on a makeshift table of stacked crates. Poirot examined it, noting the polished wood and a faint scratch on the lid, as if it had been pried open. The lavender scent, though faint, was unmistakable, a ghostly echo of Madame Dubois' presence. This box, Poirot murmured. It held something of value, but not the Étoile Verte. Something else, perhaps a document or an object of personal significance. As Fournier's men continued their search, a shout echoed from a nearby chamber. Poirot and Fournier hurried toward the sound, finding an officer standing before a locked door, its rusted hinges betraying years of disuse. With a crowbar, the door was forced open, revealing a small windowless room cluttered with broken furniture. There, slumped against a wall, was Madame Elise Dubois, alive, but bound and gagged, her lavender gown torn, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and fear. Mon Dieu! Fournier exclaimed, rushing to her side. He removed the gag and untied her wrists, his hands gentle but swift. Madame, are you hurt? Madame Dubois shook her head, her voice hoarse. No, not hurt, but frightened. I was taken, drugged. I remember little. She clutched Fournier's arm, her composure fraying. The necklace. It's safe, isn't it? Poirot's gaze sharpened. The necklace, madame. He was not taken? She nodded, her fingers trembling as she touched her throat, as if to confirm the absence of the Étoile Verte. Poirot filed this away, his suspicions deepening. Why leave the necklace if theft was the motive? He escorted Madame Dubois to the drawing-room, where a maid brought her a glass of water and a blanket. As she regained her strength, Poirot summoned the suspects. Antoine Lefebvre, Claire Beaumont, Dr. Julien Moreau, Madame Vivienne Charpentier, and Georges, knowing the moment of revelation was at hand. The room buzzed with tension as they entered, their faces a gallery of apprehension and defiance. Poirot stood before them, his small stature commanding the space. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice steady, "the mystery of Madame Dubois' disappearance is solved, but the truth, it is more intricate than a mere kidnapping. Let me unravel it." He paced, his hands clasped behind his back. Madame Dubois was taken through a hidden passage, drugged by a powerful sedative administered by Dr. Moreau. Moreau gasped, but Poirot raised a hand to silence him. The note signed a Lee lured her to a midnight rendezvous, but it was a forgery, designed to mislead. The wooden box delivered by Georges was a pretext, its contents, perhaps papers or a decoy, meant to distract. But the true motive was not theft, nor ransom. It was revenge. He turned to Madame Charpentier, whose crimson gown seemed to blaze in the soft light. "Madame, your hatred for Madame Dubois is rooted in a shared past. A man, now dead, who chose her over you, gifting her the Étoile Verte. You could not bear her triumph, her flaunting of that jewel. So you devised a plan to disgrace her, to make her vanish and cast suspicion on others." Charpentier's eyes flashed. "Preposterous! I despised Elise, but I would not stoop to such theatrics." Poirot's smile was cold. "Yet you did, madame. You enlisted Dr. Moreau, whose debts made him vulnerable to blackmail. You knew of the hidden passage from your frequent visits to this hotel in years past. You forged the note, imitating Monsieur Lefebvre's hand, to sow confusion. The box delivered by Georges was your idea, a lure to ensure Madame Dubois opened her door." Moreau's face crumpled, his voice a whisper. "I had no choice. She threatened to ruin me." Poirot nodded. "You drugged Madame Dubois, doctor, ensuring she could be moved without resistance. Georges, bribed with a small sum, delivered the box without question, unaware of its role. Mademoiselle Beaumont, you were innocent, but your silence, out of loyalty, protected the guilty." Claire sobbed softly, while Lefebvre's face darkened. "You accuse me of nothing, then?" he demanded. "You, monsieur," Poirot said, "were a convenient scapegoat. Your interest in the Étoile Verte made you a suspect, but you are guilty only of opportunism." Madame Dubois, now composed, spoke up. "The necklace, it's hidden in my suite in a secret compartment in the desk. I never told anyone, but Vivienne knew of my habits from long ago." Poirot's grey cells hummed with satisfaction. The plan was to hide Madame Dubois, steal the necklace, and stage a scandal, perhaps to suggest she fled with her lover or her debts. "But you underestimated Hercule Poirot." Charpentier's defiance collapsed, her shoulders sagging. "I wanted her humiliated," she admitted, her voice bitter. "Not dead, just shamed." Fournier signalled his men to arrest Charpentier and Moreau. Georges, pale and repentant, was detained for questioning. As the suspects were led away, Poirot turned to Madame Dubois. "Madame, your ordeal is over. The Étoile Verte will be recovered, and your name cleared." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot." With the truth laid bare, Poirot felt the familiar thrill of resolution, tempered by the weight of human frailty. The Hôtel de la Reine, with its secrets and shadows, had yielded to his relentless logic. Chapter 8. The Final Flourish. The Hôtel de la Reine basked in the soft glow of a Lyon afternoon, its façade serene as if untouched by the drama that had unfolded within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand foyer, his valise packed, his Homburg hat perched at a precise angle. The case of Madame Elise Dubois' disappearance had been solved, the threads of deceit unravelled by his unerring logic. Yet, as was his custom, Poirot lingered to ensure every detail was accounted for, every motive laid bare. The truth, he knew, was not merely in the solution, but in the elegance of its revelation. Inspector Claude Fournier approached, his weathered face softened by relief. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, extending a hand, "your grey cells have worked wonders. Madame Charpentier and Dr. Moreau are in custody. and Georges has confessed to accepting a bribe, though he claims ignorance of the full plot. Madame Dubois is shaken but safe, and the Étoile Verte is secure. Lyon owes you a debt. Poirot's moustache twitched with a modest smile. Non, non, Inspector. It is merely a matter of order and method. The human heart, it betrays itself in the smallest inconsistencies. But let us review, to ensure no shadow remains. They moved to the drawing-room, where Madame Dubois sat, her composure restored, though her eyes still held the weight of her ordeal. The Étoile Verte necklace, retrieved from its hidden compartment in the suite's desk, lay on a velvet cushion before her, its emeralds catching the light like captured stars. Poirot's gaze lingered on the jewel, not for its beauty, but for its role as the catalyst of the crime. "Madam," Poirot began, his voice gentle yet precise, "you have endured much. But I must ask, did you suspect Madame Charpentier's enmity ran so deep?" Madame Dubois sighed, her fingers brushing the necklace. "Vivian and I were friends once, long ago, until a man came between us. He gave me this necklace, and she never forgave me for it. I thought her bitterness had faded, but I was wrong. When I received that note signed L, I feared it was Antoine Lefebvre, pressing me about debts I owed his associates. I was foolish to go to the passage." Poirot nodded, his mind revisiting the forged note. The L? It was a clever ruse by Madame Charpentier, imitating Lefebvre's hand to cast suspicion on him. She knew your history with the necklace and used it to lure you. Dr. Moreau, under her coercion, ensured you were too drowsy to resist. Fournier interjected, "But the box, Monsieur Poirot, what was its purpose? It was empty when we found it." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. "The box was a distraction, a prop to gain entry to Madame Dubois' suite. Its weight, as Georges described, suggested it contained something, perhaps papers, or a decoy, to convince her of its importance. Once she opened the door, the sedative took effect, and she was spirited away through the passage." He turned to Madame Dubois. "Your debts, madame. They were mentioned in the telephone call Mademoiselle Beaumont overheard. Were they significant?" She hesitated, then nodded. "An investment, poorly advised. I owed a sum to a creditor connected to Monsieur Lefebvre. I feared he was behind the note, but I see now it was Vivian's manipulation." Poirot's grey cells hummed with satisfaction. The final pieces fell into place. Madame Charpentier's vendetta, fueled by a decades-old slight, had driven her to orchestrate a scandal, not to steal the Étoile Verte, but to humiliate Madame Dubois. Dr. Moreau, unsnared by his debts, had been her reluctant accomplice, drugging the victim to ensure compliance. Georges, swayed by a small bribe, had delivered the box unaware of its role in the scheme. Claire Beaumont, loyal but naive, had been an unwitting shield, her silence protecting the guilty, until Poirot's probing loosened her tongue. Lefebvre, though ambitious, was merely a convenient scapegoat, his interest in the necklace exploited to muddy the waters. Fournier shook his head in admiration. "You saw through it all, Monsieur Poirot. The passage, the forgery, the motives. But how did you know where to look for Madame Dubois?" "The hotel, Inspector," Poirot said. "It is a place of secrets, built when discretion was paramount. The passage suggested a hiding place nearby, and the box's discovery in the cellar pointed to the storage rooms. It was a matter of logic, nothing more." Madame Dubois rose, her dignity intact. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. You have saved not only my life, but my reputation." Poirot bowed slightly. "It is my duty, madame, to restore order where chaos reigns." As Fournier escorted Madame Dubois to her suite, Poirot lingered, his gaze sweeping the foyer. The Hôtel de la Reine, with its polished marble and whispered secrets, had yielded to his relentless pursuit of truth. He adjusted his hat, picked up his valise, and stepped toward the waiting taxi. The Rhône sparkled beyond, indifferent to the drama it had witnessed. Fournier caught up with him at the door. "Will you return to Paris, Monsieur Poirot? Or does another mystery call?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The world, it is full of puzzles, mon ami. But for now, I shall enjoy a moment of repose. Though my grey cells, they never rest." With a final twirl of his moustache, Poirot stepped into the taxi. The case of the Vanishing Lady of Lyon closed, its truths etched in his mind like a perfectly balanced equation. As the car pulled away, he glanced back at the hotel, knowing that wherever human passions clashed, Hercule Poirot would be needed again.